Hey everybody, my name is Ben Nornseif. I am the coordinator for peer education, and I am the supervisor of the peer mentor team here in the Academic Success Center. We work with students on a one-on-one basis in academic coaching appointments where we get to sit with students and offer some possible academic like consulting, basically, offering study strategies and various habits that may assist you in your academic endeavors. So one of the main topics that students come to us with or later on discover as a result of meeting with us is time management. It is the number one thing as we track requests coming in that students put as the reason why they want to meet with us. And so we felt like offering perhaps a small workshop on this topic, maybe making it a little bit more accessible to the larger student population would be beneficial. So I'm going to quickly go around and let people introduce themselves. And I'm going to actually start off with saying Abigail is a new hire for us here on our peer mentor team. She just joined us here this semester, and she will be sitting in on the conversation, and I'll let her introduce herself. So.
Hi, I'm Abigail, and I am a second year ASL interpreting major.
I'm Julia. I'm a fourth year ad photo student, so in College of Art and Design.
I'm Max. I'm a fourth year computer science student in GSIS.
I'm Amelia, and I'm a second year biomedical engineering student.
Thanks, everybody. So as we were putting this workshop together, one of the things that at least came to my mind was a lot of times students will say to us up front that, yes, time management is the reason why I'm here, and I'm hoping that you can, provide some support or feedback on that. But there are a lot of times that students don't even, they're not even necessarily aware that maybe time management is maybe an issue or something that they've actually never thought about. And so I wanted to ask the other coaches here, what are some signs or some cues that you get from students that maybe time management is something that you would want to address with them?
Whenever they open up with saying that they don't feel like they have enough time to get their work done, usually it's the case of it's kind of, especially when they're early in their college career, it's tricky to learn to organize your time when your schedule is so much more erratic than it was in high school, and not the fact that there is just not enough time. And a lot of times by the end of the meeting, the students see they have plenty of time, if anything, quite a bit of extra time to themselves.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Something that I always listen for is if a student mentions procrastination. In that case, I think time management is definitely something to discuss. And we all procrastinate a little bit, but if you think it's more of an issue for you, then time management might be something to look into.
I was just going to say that I think I always start off by asking kind of like, what's your day-to-day thing? Do you make to-do lists? Do you check your syllabus every day, or how does that work for you? And if they kind of don't have a system, that's where I'd be like, okay, let's think about this, about time management as a system, and find you one that works for you.
Great. Thanks everyone for your feedback on that. So another piece that we kind of had talked about was that our conversation around time management changes as the semester carries on, right? If a student comes to us at the beginning of the year, it looks a lot different than maybe if a student comes to us at the end of the year and is saying, I think time management is a concern, right? Because you have different perspectives and different demands, and as the semester goes on, obviously we have to kind of tailor our conversation around those demands and kind of what we know about the semester and what's expected of you. And so I know a couple of you have some thoughts about what it looks like at the beginning of the semester and maybe towards the middle of the semester, and then I'm going to wrap stuff up about what it looks like at the end of the semester. So if a student comes to you maybe in that first initial week or the next few weeks, what are some things that you would address with that student? Amelia?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the semester, my first go-to is to go through all of the syllabi that I have And from those syllabi, kind of making a weekly to-do list for each class. And now that we're in the era of online learning, that'll include like asynchronous classwork, which could include like watching videos your professor posts or just like taking notes from like lecture slides. And once you have kind of a weekly to-do list for each class, you can start to think about where you want to fit that into your weekly schedule. And considering things like your office hours, your TA, office hours, your SI sessions, stuff like that. I usually recommend that if students think they're going to have questions about their work, they at least try to start the work before those sessions occur, even if it's way before the due date. That way you have the opportunity to ask your questions and you don't get stuck the night before, you don't know how to do your homework, and you don't have anyone to ask. And then later in the semester, you might have a better idea of how long things take, but it doesn't hurt to have like a rough outline at the very beginning. Just because high school and college are structured so differently. In high school, you're just kind of on the clock from like 7 to 3. And here you're gonna have these like huge gaps in your day. And a lot of students kind of let those go to waste, and they kind of lose time that way. So you can consider, if you think you're someone that's gonna do better kind of working like a high school day, if that structure works really well for you, you can try to structure your homework in between the classes that you have. If you're someone that works really well at night, maybe you want to take those breaks in the day and then do a lot of work into the night. But those are just some things that you should think about when you're making your weekly schedule. And then obviously scheduling more than just classes. If you have a work schedule, if you do laundry at the same time every week, if you exercise at the same time every day, putting that in there as well. But just having like an outline for your day can be really helpful, especially because we are stuck at home so much right now. So to have that clear schedule can be really helpful for people.
Amelia, so just in response to something you shared there, is this, how do you bring that up in a conversation when you're talking to a student about like, what would you prefer? Maybe doing like that 7 to 3 kind of mindset, or breaking it up into chunks? How do you like introduce that thought?
Yeah, so the first thing I kind of bring up is just how different college is. And a lot of the freshmen really respond to that, and they have no idea how to structure their day because they're just kind of lost with these huge gaps. And then I kind of ask them, if they liked the way that high school was structured, if their brain is better turned on from like 9 to 5 and then not having to think about anything in the evening. Some people that works for them and they can go for that amount of time and their brain works that way. And some people hated the way the high school was structured. And now that they have this freedom, they can start thinking about taking, either hour-long breaks or half-hour-long breaks in their day to kind of reset their brain. So I just ask them, and they usually have a pretty good idea. But you can also experiment in the first couple weeks of the semester. If you find that your schedule isn't working so well for you, you can always tweak it.
Thanks, Amelia.
I was just going to add that something that's really important with scheduling is to like not only kind of play around with different schedules and set something up for yourself, but also to be really patient with yourself, especially in the beginning of the semester, when you're finding that like you're setting a number of things out for your day, and maybe you even have a certain order for those things. But if you get to that point in the day and you need to switch things around, that's okay. And you can't finish everything, that's all right. You just have to look at your whole schedule that you have going on and maybe flip things around, like trade places, things like that. Because I think I tend to notice a lot of like anxiety and frustration when students don't follow through with the schedules they plan out. And it's totally fine. Like nothing that you put on a schedule is set in stone. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think building the schedule you want is a huge part of sticking to it. And if you actually like the order of your schedule, the time you get things done, then you're actually going to stick to it, as opposed to like trying to force yourself into maybe being too efficient and you're not actually getting anything done. It's going to be counterproductive in the long run.
Thanks, guys. So I wanted to actually also mention one of the resources, at least like in those first couple of weeks, that I would reference with the beginning of the semester is the like the semester calendar or the semester grid. As like, for me, I think that is something that kind of gives you like this higher, like elevated view of your semester. It's not necessarily something that I'm like, you need to kind of follow religiously like you should with like a weekly schedule, or maybe like other routines that you establish for yourself. But it's good to kind of see, this is where I feel like it's important. It's good to see like where your weeks are really, there's a lot expected of you, and maybe where some other weeks it's just a little bit lighter, and so that you know where the ebbs and flows of your semester are kind of going into it, so that you can brace yourself and prepare ahead of time for like when week 10 gets crazy. You know that in advance, and it's not as stressful, hopefully, for you. So but speaking of just like establishing routines, I don't know, Max, if there was some other things that you wanted to share in regards to that.
Yeah, so it goes pretty hand in hand with what Amelia talked about. In university especially, most of what you do is on this weekly basis. Your classes, you'll have them throughout the week, and they're just going to repeat every week for the 14, 15 weeks in the semester. Sometimes you could even kind of see that, like, smaller kind of routines or repetitions in there. Let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, Tuesday, Thursday classes. Those are very similar in their structure. So if you can establish routines for one of those days, you can kind of keep them going for the rest of them. But generally speaking, working on the week side of things is the most broad, at least to me, for a university schedule. And establishing those routines, doing things regularly to the point where you don't really think about it, you're kind of on autopilot, which I think we've all experienced. The first 2 weeks, you keep having to look at your syllabus, where is, what room is this in the building, getting lost. And then you kind of just know it. Same, and it's just kind of autopilot. Yeah, I wake up, I shower, I go to class, I know where the room is. You don't think about it. If you can establish that, especially for things like studying, going to office hours, that's great. Lowering that barrier to entry that our mind kind of, gives us the opportunity to procrastinate or find something else to do. It's really nice to have that kind of set in stone, kind of, take that burden off your mind. And like I said, the routine is a lot of times on this weekly basis. And like Amelia talked about, scheduling everything from like groceries, laundry, exercise, calling your parents, whatever it may be. Things like that, adding those to your routine can be helpful, and they could be like triggers for other parts of those for routines. So for me, I do my groceries, I eat. This is on Tuesdays, and then I go right into a specific class's assignment. And that's just kind of how my schedule is. It's due 3 days from there. So to me, it's this nice flow, and I kind of it's just autopilot at this point. So you can use different parts of your routine as a launching point for the next. And they can be super specific, like I have class 125 to 215 Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or they could be a little bit more general, depending on what it is and depending how you like it. Be malleable. Do what works for you, so you can actually benefit from it. So if it's something like, I go grocery shopping Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday around this time, if you like that malleability in there, let it exist. Don't force yourself into something if you prefer it a different way and there isn't a huge benefit coming from kind of restricting that. So if you like, maybe you take an hour break at this time one day, maybe you'll take a 2-hour break at another time before you get into studying for a class. If that works for you, then I think that's a completely fine routine. So having that variation in there can be helpful, and you should allow yourself to.
Thanks, Max. I really appreciate you sharing some insight about forming routines. I think that, so really quickly, I'm gonna welcome Morgan. Morgan, if you would like to introduce yourself to the workshop members, that would be great. You can just share what year you are, what your program is.
Yeah, so my name is Morgan, and I am a first-year grad student and environmental science major.
Cool. Thanks, Morgan. So I was going to say, on top of Max, as you were sharing things, I think it was getting my mind thinking about how a lot of times people, not just students, when they think about like managing their schedule, they think about like, oh, I need like a daily planner, or I need to maybe utilize Google or something, or Outlook, and it's so much more than that, because some of the things that you were hitting on, and just in the fact of like those first couple of weeks of school when things aren't routine, and how your mind is like overwhelmed with processing all of the new information, right? A lot of it, time management is also just about like habits and discipline, right? Because we don't form the habit of like good time management because we can't get through that first few weeks where like you're doing a lot of new stuff, right? In order for that habit to form, you got to work through that process. And so it's not just about having like a really awesome planner, although Amelia might think otherwise, right? There's a lot more that goes into effective time management, so than just that.
I definitely think that kind of building those habits is so huge, because if you can just have something repeat in your mind and it's on autopilot, it just takes so much away from it. And I think having that written down, it should be kind of a default state. But if you can kind of build that kind of autopilot mentality, I feel like that's huge, especially for things that can be as hectic and time consuming as classes and homework.
So I just wanted, for those people that are watching this, I just wanted to quickly do a screen share so that you all can see the Academic Success Center's website and help you navigate it in case you're thinking, oh, I'd like to learn a little bit more about some of these things. So this is just our general landing page, but if you click on services, you can access specifically academic coaching, which is the peer mentors kind of forte. And this is where you would go to request an appointment. And once you do that, that's when I receive the requests and process them and connect you with one of the peer mentors here. The other piece is a lot of the things that we are referencing either now or maybe in a coaching appointment, if you've had one with us or will have one with us, stems from a lot of these resources that are accessible on our website as well. So there are various skills, study skills, as well as tools that we would reference and that would be valuable to you, I think, right? Some of the things that people don't know about is that we offer courses that are free to students, all about like kind of building healthy habits as a student, based off of things like time management and note-taking and motivation and goal setting. And so all these topics that are really, really important for kind of laying that foundation to be a successful student, right? But the other piece of it here is the tools that, again, we reference a lot. I know I've said this now, but these are available both in PDF and like a Google form. So you can bring these up on your, on your screen right now and start filling them out, in process, right? And so it's a great tool to have, but everything that we would essentially reference is here for all students in their disposal. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. It's asc.rit.edu. So moving on to maybe the last third or last quarter of the semester and thinking about the end of the semester. And these are things that I think that the suggestions that I would make, and obviously all of you can kind of chime in as well as you're thinking about like, what are some of the things that you would say with students that are maybe concerned about their time management. At this point, in my mind, the way that I'm directing the conversation is more about like, okay, what is a priority to you at this point? And what is going to be, if you have 3 weeks left, like, all right, we can't think about what happened the first 10 or 11 weeks of the semester. You have 3 weeks left. What does success look like for you in these next 3 weeks, right? And then based off of that, kind of prioritizing what demands you have. And so sometimes students are in a place where like they're doing really well in school, but they want to do a little bit better, right? In these last few weeks, they want to be able to kind of work out a good schedule for their finals and making sure that they have enough time to prepare for that. And that's a different conversation, right? And then there's some students that are like, I'm not doing really well and I need to pass my finals, right? And I'm just overwhelmed because I have a lot of projects that are due and I also have to study for my exams, right? And so there's students that I'm having that type of conversation with. And so for me, then I try to help them kind of navigate, all right, what are the things that are the most costly, in the sense of like, if you look at your syllabus and is this project that's due at the end of the semester, is this weightier than the rest of the projects that you've had in this class, or is it the same, right? If it's the same, then maybe that's something where you can say, okay, maybe I can not make that as important as maybe something else that's pressing on me, right? You have to kind of walk through all of the things that are due and determining what is going to impact your grade the most at that point in the semester. From there, obviously, if you haven't reached out to your professors or TAs, this is always something that I share with students in my conversations with them, regardless of where it is in the semester, but now more than ever, right? If you haven't reached out to your professor yet at this point, this would be the time to do it, to say, I want to make sure that I at least do well with my finals. What do I need to know in order to do well? You know, and if you go in specifically saying, oh, maybe I just want, do you have a past exam that I can at least study for this last test, right? If you come in with a specific request, usually professors are really good at honoring that specific request. If you just come in being like, I have no idea what I'm doing and I think I'm gonna fail, like that's not gonna work. And so, not saying that they won't support you, but it's better to come in with a specific request. So you have maybe 3 weeks left before you're about to take, you know, your finals for the semester. I would plot out, you know, 21 days, 14 days, however much time you have left, plotting out like each day what specifically you're going to do. And then it's maybe kind of like breaking down. So if you had 50 chapters in one class for the whole semester, maybe day one, you're looking at like the first 5 chapters, right? And just reviewing them, and so on and so forth. Day 2, you're looking at chapters 6 through 10, day 3, and, you know, and that. And even there, to make time more efficient, you would be doing like, if you're just looking at the first 5 chapters in that first day, you would be looking at the summaries of each of those chapters. And you're going through those summaries and you're determining like what it is that you know, what it is that you think you know, and then what it is that you don't know, right? And the things that you think you know, you're just going back through to make sure that you actually do know them. And the things that you don't know, that's where you're going to spend most of your concentration on as you're reviewing those 5 chapters that you're studying for. So that's a piece of it. I think there are a couple other things that I would generally suggest. I need to double check my notes. But in the interim, is there anybody else that would say something that, if you're in the last few weeks of the semester and the student's concerned about their time management?
I would definitely ask your professor if they're more of a big picture kind of person, or if they are the small, minute details, like knowing exact dates or facts, whatever it may be, because that can be a big difference too, and also change how you're studying. So making sure that you have that communication with your professor about how they want you to study and also what material to study.
Good.
The middle and the end of the semester is definitely a tricky time. You're kind of dealing with like being tired from the past couple weeks, and your motivation might start to wane a little bit, and you're getting increasingly more anxious about those final grades that are coming in. So it's a really important time to be like hyper aware of your time management. And I think like one of the big ways that you can do that is, especially if you're dealing with that kind of motivation problem, is to start small, you know. So like we mentioned before, adding things onto your to-do list that are like pretty much like everyday tasks that you can begin to just check off and rebuild that sense of motivation for yourself and momentum by starting small. So like, you know, start with making your bed, eating breakfast, put that on your list, check those off, and then you'll be more likely or more inclined to tackle some of the bigger things on your list. Another thing you can do is try and break up those bigger tasks into smaller pieces, or like I like to call them benchmarks. So for example, if you have a calc homework that's 15 problems, right, split it up into 5 problems, and you could do those at increments throughout your day, throughout like one day if you have to get it done, or, you know, split that up across your week. There's also other things you can do, like not necessarily thinking about like splitting something up like 5-5-5, but maybe think about it in a new way that's specific to the content you're learning. So if you have calc problems where you have to set up variables, and it's like a word problem, maybe the first benchmark that you have is sitting down with all 15 of those questions and just reading through them, understanding the questions, and then defining the variables, right? So try and really think about your work critically and think, okay, what's the best way for me to break this up so that it's a little bit easier, so it's not like such a looming task that's like giving you a lot of anxiety. And then, like I said, think about like new ways to do things, because sometimes novelty is a really, really good way to motivate yourself and to, like I mentioned earlier, like kind of build that momentum for yourself. So yeah, I think that's like definitely important for the middle and end of the semester.
So Julia, the piece that you mentioned about like breaking things into smaller chunks or manageable chunks, that is a part of the learning process, right? We in the Academic Success Center will say that like chunking things, regardless of what it is a part of like learning things better. Like if you're reading a chapter, right, maybe taking a section of that chapter and just summarizing it in a sentence or two, as a, you know, so you have 10 pages that you just read, can you summarize it in a page or two, right? And that's called, you know, breaking it into smaller and you're more manageable and you can like retain and process that. And so also when you're thinking about like, okay, I have 15 calc questions, right, breaking them into smaller chunks, not only are you managing it, your stress levels are lower, but you're also retaining that information a little bit better, right? And so that ties into one of the techniques that I think is like a hallmark in the Academic Success Center, at least for the professionals. I know that I say it a lot in my coaching appointments, and that's the Pomodoro technique. And that's taking like a large chunk of time and breaking it into smaller chunks of time, right? So if you're like, I'm going to study for 3 hours tonight, most likely, unless you're Amelia, you probably won't study for that whole time, right? But if you're more realistically though, if you say, I'm going to study for 30 minutes, upon 30 minutes, upon 30 minutes, that is a little bit more doable for most students, right? And they will say, the Pomodoro technique is saying, break into smaller chunks, but then also leave yourself within that maybe 30-minute time, leave yourself maybe 5 minutes to take a break, or maybe 10 minutes at the end. So every 30 minutes, you're taking a 5-minute break. It sounds great, right? You're kind of building in that like recess for your mind to have, which makes it a little bit more sustainable. I was going to say, I don't know if there's, before we wrap up, everyone, if there is anything else as far as like any other strategies or suggestions at this time that you would offer for students that are maybe like, how can I manage my time better?
I just want to reiterate what Julia said earlier, which is being patient with yourself, which is not really a time management tip. It's just something that I think more students need to realize. The jump from high school to college, and even from your first year of college to your second, is a really, really big transition. And I think for a lot of us, we didn't nail it in the first semester. You know, it kind of took into the second semester of freshman year, even the first semester of sophomore year, to kind of get these things down. So be patient with yourself and know that it gets easier and it gets better.
Mm. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, we are, this is the Peer Mentor team, and we work with the Academic Success Center. And if you have any questions, or maybe you're interested in setting up a coaching appointment, remember you can go to the ASCatRIT.edu to learn more about that. Thank you.